Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank Michael and Jacques and John because I've spent 27 years in Southern Company and working in utilities. I started as a nuclear power plant engineer. I've worked in coal plants. My previous job to the one I have now is I ran engineering and construction services, which built a lot of the combined cycle gas plants that we have in the southeast in Southern Company's territory, as well as when I moved to Gulf Power in Florida. Florida's had energy efficiency goals for 25 years. And our governor, Charlie Crist, had some executive orders 2.5 years ago talking about the need for renewables, and in fact has directed the Public Service Commission to have an RPS sent to the legislature for their review and the ability to ratify this session. So what I want to do, and I'm going to be giving you the perspective of someone who's actually worked in all of these different generation areas, is very involved in it every day. But also we're a vertically integrated utility. And when our prices go up, I'm also responsible for the customer service reps, the line technicians, and the call centers that talk to our customers who see the rising prices. So what I'd like to do over the next few minutes is talk to you about energy efficiency and renewables in the context of the whole picture, all the way from how we decide how much we can generate at what price to understanding every day what it means in the lives of people that we serve who rely on us for their electricity needs. So as you've heard, all of these are necessary. Like any portfolio, any single one is not the answer. We have to have a reasoned, affordable approach using all of these, and I want to spend most of my time talking about renewables and energy efficiency. I think it's helpful, first of all, and you may have seen some charts like this. This is from the Energy Information Agency as of December 17, 2008. So this data is a little over 3 months old. These are the projections when you look at coal, natural gas, nuclear, renewables, oil and other, and you look at the projections. What's interesting, in 1997, 57% of the generation in this country was from coal. It was 49% in 2007. But even projected out to 2030, as recently as December of last year, it was still projected to be about 45% when you get to 2030. Natural gas has jumped from 16% of our generation to 21% just since 1997. Nuclear, this reflects the addition of 13,000 megawatts of nuclear, 11, 12 plants, and yet it stays, it actually it's reduced somewhat in terms of its percent of generation because of the growth. Renewables, I'm going to talk about that on the next slide in much more detail. It shows the largest growth, and then you'll see, I think that our lunch speaker, Mr. Pickens, would be happy to see that oil and other is actually decreasing over that period of time. But let's look at renewables. When you look at the projections from the Energy Information Agency from December of last year, you will see that as you go forward through 2030, while renewables it's 1/3 of the growth that we see, the biggest part is in biomass and wind. In fact, wind is projected to increase 300%, biomass 500%. Now, in terms of percentages, solar is actually forecast to increase 1,700%. But even with a 1,700%, by 2030, it's 0.4% of the total generation. So the Energy Information Agency is looking at this in terms of meeting the biggest growth through renewables, and this is their look at what the biggest renewable areas are. Waste, interestingly, from the federal, when you look at the economic stimulus, most of municipal solid waste is not included as a renewable. Many states, however, do include that as a renewable source, and geothermal and solar. What I want to do now is I'm going to show you some graphs from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory as part of the DOE website. We hear a lot about the renewable resources, and we hear a lot about the geography. And some people believe that and some don't. But what I want to show you is from NREL, when we look at the different forms of renewables, where in the United States do we have the most potential? You heard a lot about it in the earlier panels this morning in terms of how do you build transmission to get it to load centers. But what I want to do is show you exactly where we can find many of these types of renewables. And this is just a listing. You know, I have to tell you, from somebody like me who's been an engineer in the industry for a long time, we've been very hopeful about hydrogen fuel cells for a long time. You know, we've got to get to the point we can create hydrogen cheaply. Right now, it costs more to buy the natural gas to create the hydrogen than to burn the natural gas in the first place. But there's a lot of great research going on. And then under biomass, I've listed what's commonly referred to as biomass. Ocean, there's a lot of exciting things going on in ocean technology R&D. Oregon State with the tidal. In Florida, in my state, down at Florida Atlantic, there's a lot of research going on in terms of Gulf Stream and how you capture the Gulf Stream. But we're probably 15 to 20 years out for anything that could make a significant impact. We talk about cost per kilowatt hour, and these vary. One thing you'll see is, in terms of predictability, the traditional baseload, nuclear, coal, natural gas, has not quite as much variability based on where you put it. Whereas when you look at biomass, wind, and solar, wind, for example, can be as cheap as 5 cents a kilowatt hour, where it's most cost effective, up to about 70, based on where it's placed. Now, the new wind turbines are much more efficient. I believe before 2004, only about 3.6% of all wind stations, wind turbines, were more than 40% of capacity. Today, it's almost 26%, 27% have greater than 40% capacity. So the technology is improving, but there's still a wide variability. And then in solar, the difference in the desert in Florida, for example, and these numbers come from the Florida Solar Center. The difference in Florida is we have a lot of cloud cover. So it makes a difference at least when you look at PV arrays. But the bottom is the existing cost. You can see that for those who built nuclear in the 60s and 70s, the cost is about 0.5 cent to 1.5 cents. It's close to hydro when you look at it. And then at the top, you see the fully busbar cost of new clean coal, new gas combined cycle, nuclear, biomass, and then, of course, the wind and solar I've already talked about. So solar. This is a great map that NREL has on its website. The darker red means the better production in terms of solar energy. Here's one way to look at it. What they did was they say, let's take a meter square solar panel, and let's put it all over the country and take an average of how many kilowatt hours a day that meter squared will generate. And you'll see that less than 2, the brown is where there is the least efficient solar production from solar PV arrays, all the way up to the best. And as you might imagine, and as we know, the desert Southwest tends to be the best part of the country. Although you do have average in other parts of the country. Doesn't mean that you can't get solar. It just means it's not as efficient, which means it will be more costly. Now, it also means, for example, though, that solar thermal or distributed forms of solar may have a better application in some of the areas of the country where you don't have quite the radiant sunlight you do as you do in the desert Southwest. And in fact, in Florida, and I'll talk about this in a minute, we're putting a lot of emphasis on the distributed solar water heating, those type of things. My company offers a $1,000 incentive, for example, for solar water heating. That's the solar picture geographically in the U.S. And this is wind. Again, poor is white, and you go down to superb being the blue. Most wind turbines today, you need at least a 3 for it to be marginally cost effective in terms of siting wind. We have areas in the southern part, or the southern and the northeastern part, especially off the coast. And there's been some research projects. A Southern company, my parent company, has done research in conjunction with Georgia Tech 5 miles off the Savannah coast with windmills looking. The problems come in terms of hurricanes or what you have to do to get the power back to shore, but we are doing research there as well as in the Gulf, where I am in the Gulf Coast. We're looking at putting some MET towers out on some beaches, which is not as popular when you're putting something that big on the beach, but we are doing some research to see what can be done offshore. So that's the picture that wind has in this country. Biomass is the best hope for the southeast, where I live. The darker is where there are more wood and wood products in terms of biomass. Again, west and upper Midwest is pretty average, but out west is not as attractive for biomass. And then you've got geothermal. Again, the west is very blessed with a lot of heat underground. And hydro, where you have elevation changes and you have water sources, you'll see that the eastern part of the country fares a little better, although you do have many places, especially in the northwest, as we know, where they've got really inexpensive hydro. So that's kind of the picture of renewables. Really what I wanted to do is, if you're where I am, for example, in the southeast, and you're looking at how do I increase my renewable percentage in terms of my generation, the first thing you look at is what are the options that I have? What is out there? So as we look at this, we are looking specifically at biomass. Southern Company is looking at converting 3 plants on the table now from coal to biomass. In my company at Gulf Power in Northwest Florida, We have one plant that we're looking to convert. It's an older coal plant to convert it 100 megawatts, which is not big, but it's 100 megawatts from coal to biomass by 2012. And we're looking at another coal plant that we will probably close down from carbon issues. It's not worth putting all of the other environmental controls on it from a cost standpoint to our customers of converting it also to biomass. We're looking at distributed forms like solar thermal, water heating, those type things. So I wanted to talk about renewables, but I also wanted to put that in the context of energy efficiency, because I don't think you can talk about the sources we have of generation without talking about energy efficiency. And we heard several speakers this morning, and it is true, the cleanest, cheapest kilowatt hour is the one that you don't have to produce, because we are basically conserving and we're saving that for energy efficiency. Also, from a demand side reduction, when you look at the numbers, peak demand is growing much faster than actually total electrical consumption is, which means that we need to find ways to reduce those peak times as more buildings and more homes are being air conditioned. So to be able to reduce those peaks actually helps us prevent building CTs or some of those plants that burn the fossil fuels. So it's a critical part along with just reducing energy consumption in general. So this is a chart some of you may have seen from EFRI, and I'll just quickly go through it. The actual in blue, the baseline forecast in red. What EFRI did, and this report came out in January of this year, and they looked only at what is currently in law or in regulations. They said, you know, we don't want to put in what could happen, what might happen. What could we do in terms of energy efficiency? And they started with a technical potential. What if every available technology were used? That's not up here. And then they said, what if it's cost effective, where we look at the life of the incremental cost and where it outweighs, the benefits outweigh the cost? Then what's that potential? And that's the lowest line in terms of what you could do. Then they looked at maximum achievable. What about customers and how they tend to react in the best run programs in the country? So the pinkish line, maximum achievable potential, is if you took the best run programs in the entire country and put them everywhere, what could we achieve? And then you've got the pie, which is what they call realistic achievable potential. Realistic achievable potential says, based on customers, how customers react across the country, what do we really think we could do with what we know today? Now, if there are new building standards passed, if there are new laws passed, this could change. But pretty much, according to the Electric Power Research Institute, somewhere in that crosshatched area is where, just with what we have today, regulations, codes, what we have today, we should realistically be able to achieve if we put our emphasis and our priorities on the right things. But there is a cost, however. When you look at realistic potential, 2010, $1 to $2 billion, which in the scheme of things is pretty reasonable. By 2020, 8 to 20, 19 to 47 billion. By 2030, maximum potential is a bit more. Some of the things, energy efficiency programs, you all represent places all over the country as well as the world. Energy checkups and audits, almost every utility in the country does this. But I will tell you that some places it's an online survey and that's it. Other places, for example, what we do is we send marketing reps out to people's houses and they crawl through attics. And they check registers on their air conditioning. As you might imagine, we have high heat and high humidity for several months out of the year. Low-income weatherization, $5 billion, I believe, in the current economic stimulus plan to improve low-income weatherization. And Energy Star, appliances, in terms of being supported by the EPA. Many, many utilities have energy management systems. This, to me, is one of the key ways that we can actually change consumer behavior. But it's not enough to have smart meters and smart thermostats. I believe that you must have some type of critical pricing mechanism in place. We've had one for 10 years in North Florida where our utility is. And we have it. It's very simple, though. We don't get hourly or every 2 hours. You don't get signals. We have critical price, high price, medium, and low. And we hook up the top 4 energy users in your home. And you can program your thermostat, or you can call our call center. And we're about to roll out where you can go on a website to our website anywhere from wherever you are and program through our website your thermostat in your home. But bottom line, we're seeing people running things at night during the low time. So we're actually seeing a lot of consumer behavior modification. You must have smart meters to do this. This is a pilot program for many years. We have maybe 15,000 customers is all on this now. But I will talk in a minute. Southern Company is rolling out 100% smart meters at about 90% by 2012. And then every customer we've got, it will be much simpler for them to be able to do this. So one of the best ways we can mold consumer behavior wherever we are is through the use of energy management systems. Geothermal heat pumps. How many of you have this program pretty active where you are? Geothermal heat pumps, in fact, Patrick Moore, one of the co-founders of Greenpeace, who's a huge supporter of nuclear, the second thing he pushes is geothermal heat pumps. 5 to 8 feet underground, the ground is a heat source if you're in the north where it's cold. It's a heat sink in the south. And we have a McDonald's that the National McDonald's is looking at as a prototype in Pensacola, Florida. They just went a year and they saved half of their heating and cooling over the year. Heating and cooling is 40% of that McDonald's. They saved half, 20% of their energy bill through geothermal heat pumps. We have 3 schools that are saving 50% on their heating and cooling bill by the use of geothermal heat pumps. And it's very simple. You just have 200 feet in the ground, you have PVC pipes, and you have heat transfer. And there's no equipment outside. It's a great program. We also have a residential program we offer incentives for. Solar thermal I've talked about, thin film and silicon PV. Wind microturbines. We don't have a lot of sustained wind for the large wind turbines in the southeast, but we are experimenting in northwest Florida with several of the microturbines on billboards, and they're being quite effective. Certification criteria. We have programs, and utilities should have programs. Our program says Florida has an energy code, a state building code, but we have a certification that you have to exceed that 20%. You have to have either solar water heating, heat pump recovery. You have to have all of these things, and we'll have a special EarthSense certified. And we have developers who want their subdivisions EarthSense certified, similar to the LEED certification for commercial buildings. And we also have the certification for businesses when they have at least these components in their program. Smart meters, you've heard a lot about today. This is what will revolutionize our industry all the way from the switch yard at the power plant to the person having a smart home. Smart grid, if you ask anybody in this room, our definitions will probably get 150 different definitions. But to me, to us, smart grid is everything from the time you generate the electricity until it's consumed. And it's everything in transmission, it's distribution efficiency. We heard about the question about motors. It is making sure our equipment is utilizing electricity to the extent we can, and making sure that people have the option to use electricity in their home the smartest way they can. Economic stimulus, I'm not going to go through this. These are just some of the provisions of the economic stimulus plan, and there are some really good things can come of this if we do this in a smart way. This is just looking at where the dollars are going in the stimulus plan. Energy efficiency, over $20 billion. And these are the biggest block of that. $6.3 billion goes to the state in terms of state block grants to use for renewables and energy efficiency, for utilities, for municipalities, for co-ops to use in terms of helping that ultimate customer out there. Fossil energy is CCS, clean coal. Smart grid, $8.3 billion. Renewable energy programs, $8.4 billion. So we're looking at over $40 billion just under this part of the economic stimulus, the energy provisions in the economic stimulus program. So bottom line, a diverse portfolio of energy options is critical. Number 2, research and development is key. And the third thing, and I can't emphasize this enough, from someone who works with our customers every day, and by the way, 43% of our customers have household incomes of less than $40,000 a year. So we can talk about a lot of really great sounding programs, but if only upper middle class or higher income people can afford it, we are missing the boat, and the others are the ones who need it the most. We have got to find ways to help the low income families who can't cut their energy uses 50% because they're only using it for lighting and heating and cooling as it is now. We've got to find ways to help them use energy better, help them have more energy efficient homes, and help them be able to have money to pay their mortgages and send their kids to school too. Thank you.